Before the new Ninja Turtles movie came out, I was really excited to see a villain other than the Shredder. I grew up with the 2007 movie, which briefly mentions the Shredder at the start, so I only became aware that he was a major villain later on as a teenager. And when my housemate showed me the 2003 cartoon, I really came to appreciate him until the end of season 1. I didn't really care for the whole Shredder is actually an alien in a robot suit twist. It made him being a badass ninja not impressive anymore. Then my friend showed me the Michael Bay movies, and they were bad. Shredder was pretty lame, but by then I'd gotten the point. Shredder is the Turtles' signature villain, and I'd had my fill and was ready to see someone fresh and new. So when I saw the trailer for Mutant Mayhem and the villain was some guy I'd never heard of called Superfly, I got really excited. The thought was in the back of my mind that they might tease a sequel with the Shredder at the end, but I buried the idea because it annoyed me. So then we watched the movie, and it was awesome. It was really fun to see a villain that mirrored the Turtles' desperation to live in a world where they could just be themselves, but was essentially Master Splinter if he had let his hatred of humans evolve into murderous rage instead of miserable cowardice. And then the movie ended, and Cynthia said, "We have another way to get the Turtles." And my heart fell. The camera pulled back to reveal the Shredder, and I sank into my seat. I felt like the tease of the Shredder showing up in a potential sequel was undercutting the excitement we were supposed to feel by just having watched the movie, as if Mutant Mayhem was only a stepping stone to getting to the real bad guy. This isn't the only time I've been frustrated by big-name villains swooping in to steal the show from other smaller villains. In fact, I've noticed it's become something of a pattern. Sometimes it's through intrusive cameos, and other times it's through encroaching plot lines. Sometimes it's just an excuse to get away with lazy writing. And for me at least, it tends to be distracting at best, and at worst it can have a negative effect on the movie overall. So I'm here to talk about that, and hopefully some of you might understand why this frustrates me. Here's an example. I'm a huge fan of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. Spider-Man 3 was controversial on release because the movie was disjointed. It was praised for its visual effects, but the story was criticized pretty heavily because there was too much going on, too many characters, and there were so many moving pieces that in writing there were brief talks about splitting the movie into 2 parts. The reason for this is Venom. He was never meant to be in that movie. In 2018, producer Avi Arad took responsibility for forcing Sam Raimi to put Venom in it. Raimi didn't want Venom to be part of it, but Arad was seeing dollar signs because you could sell a lot of toys with this Venom guy. The movie ended up being unfocused and had to survive by cycling one villain out when it was time for another to show up. If Venom hadn't been shoehorned into it, Spider-Man 3 could have given Harry Osborn, and in particular Sandman, the focus that Raimi wanted, and the movie would have been a dozen times better for it. I personally love the movie anyway, but the point stands that Venom's intrusion had a negative effect on the movie's reception from critics and audiences. Raimi ended up pulling out on Spider-Man 4 in pre-production because he didn't want to disappoint the audience again and didn't feel that he had enough time before the deadline to make a movie that would make up for Spider-Man 3. So not only did Venom encroach on Sandman's story and ruin Spider-Man 3, but he also stopped Spider-Man 4 from happening, which could have apparently involved the Vulture, Black Cat, and Dr. Connors finally turning into the Lizard. Thanks, Venom. Spider-Man has a huge array of complex villains and enemies, often with deep personal ties back to Peter Parker or Spider-Man, and sometimes both. You've got Green Goblin, Hobgoblin, Scorpion and Morbius, the Lizard and the Vulture, the Shocker, Dr. Octopus, Rhino, Mysterio, Sandman, Electro, Hammerhead, Silvermane and Sable, Mr. Negative, Humdinger, Tombstone, Black Cat, Chameleon, the Prowler, the Kingpin and J. Jonah Jameson. These are all characters who do get a slice of pie here and there, but Venom always seems to be the guy who's taking the bigger half. And yeah, Venom's a cool villain, but so are most of the other ones I just named, and most of them don't get nearly enough stories. Venom's always getting shoved into the next Spider-Man thing, and people seem to go nuts for it every time, as if he wasn't already in the last 200 Spider-Man stories. I spoke to a friend about this once, and he said, "Oh, but Venom's a fan favorite, you know? People want to see Venom." You have seen Venom. The 90s show, Spider-Man Unlimited, the 2000 game, the Ultimate Spider-Man game, Spider-Man 3, Spectacular Spider-Man, Web of Shadows, the Ultimate Spider-Man show, the 2017 show, the Venom movies, and the fucking Spider-Man 2 game on the PS5. Ugh. And that's just a few. I didn't even mention the comics. One defense I've heard people use for this is that every time Venom shows up, he's not adapted faithfully or the way people want to see him. You know, it doesn't count. They didn't do it right, so now they have to do it again in the next one. So what those people are saying is that Venom's been hogging the spotlight for decades for nothing. when we could have been getting some really awesome stories out of the other villains instead. But look, if it's taken this many adaptations and you're still not happy, then clearly it's not meant to be and you need to move to the back of the line. Like it or not, you've had your turn and it's time to let the other characters breathe. For a long time now, Venom's been that kid in show and tell who just won't shut the fuck up, has nothing interesting left to say, and takes so long to say it that none of the other kids get a fair turn. When it's always Venom, we come to see Peter Parker as being always the way he is when dealing with Venom. But his dynamic with Eddie Brock is different to that of his dynamic with Dr. Octavius, which is different to Norman Osborn, or Flint Marko, or Martin Lee, or anyone else. When we get different villains, we get to see the hero differently. They do things they wouldn't normally do with the other villain. They talk to people they wouldn't otherwise have a reason to talk to. They make decisions they wouldn't normally be pushed to make. In other words, we get different stories. When we only ever get to see one side of a hero because they're constantly being pitted against the same villain every time, both characters become boring. Have you ever heard of too much of a good thing? All of this put together made it really refreshing to see the villain of Spider-Verse 2 was a guy I hardly knew anything about. The Spot. My housemate had told me about him and how he was an interesting villain from the 90s animated series and deserved another chance, but he never would have thought the Spot would end up getting a movie feature. So when he was announced as the main villain of Across the Spider-Verse, my friend was excited beyond belief. That movie ended up taking the Spot and launching him from forgotten obscurity to massive fanfare. Something like that would never have happened if they had once again played it safe and just said, make Venom the bad guy, we'll sell some toys. Hey, speaking of playing it safe, do you know what other franchise does this but with every old character? Darth Vader died 43 years ago. How much story could he possibly have left to tell? Well, if the Obi-Wan Kenobi show is anything to go by, the answer is none. The Obi-Wan show felt like it was made purely because someone at Disney wanted to see a new Vader versus Kenobi fight, but only remembered you're supposed to write a story leading up to it when the time came to start shooting. It doesn't have a reason to be. Nothing that happens in it matters. All the show does is tell us how Leia and Obi-Wan met, and it shows Obi-Wan finding out that Anakin's alive. And neither of those are substantial enough reasons to justify the show's existence. In A New Hope, the original Star Wars, the first time we see Leia is her pleading for Obi-Wan's help. And we really don't need an answer as to how she knows him. We can pretty readily accept that in this universe, there are people who know each other. Seeing them meet for the first time in the Obi-Wan show really wasn't something we needed or wanted. And as for the Vader and Obi-Wan fight, they were just banking on people clapping and cheering when they saw the prequel boys again. I mean, one, it's not a good fight, and two, it kind of breaks canon.
When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
This line doesn't matter anymore when the last time they saw each other has been retconned from Anakin betraying the Jedi Order and massacring children, and Obi-Wan chopping him up and leaving him to burn alive, to Vader chasing him a bit, and Obi-Wan breaking his helmet, and then saying goodbye and leaving. Fucking who cares? Breaking canon is forgivable. I mean, it's bound to happen in a franchise that's nearly 50 years old. But doing it just to have Darth Vader and Obi-Wan fight again puts a massive dampener on the impact of how Revenge of the Sith ends, and the significance of their final fight in A New Hope. There's just no point to the Obi-Wan show. It's fan service for the sake of it, and the script and story are so bad that there's just no way to justify the show's existence. Okay. It's not all bad. You know what did have a justified reason for Darth Vader to be there? Rogue One. I love him in that movie for a good couple of reasons. First is that he was used sparingly. Krennic spent the whole movie doing everything he could to stop the rebels from getting the Death Star plans, and Vader showing up in the middle to threaten him was more than fan service. It doesn't overshadow Krennic's role, it intensifies the pressure he's under, because now he knows the bosses are watching, telling him, don't make me get involved. So, later, when the Rogue One crew do send the plans to the rebellion, that's the last strike against Krennic. The Empire shoots him in the face with the Death Star, and then we get the scene where Vader cuts through a whole platoon of rebels just to stop them from sharing it, and it's absolutely terrifying. You can see how determined he is, and it's a really strong way to show us, the audience, that the rebels getting these plans scares the Empire enough that Vader himself has to intervene, but it also shows us that he's smart about how it looks. The rebels aren't thinking, ha ha, he's terrified, we've just found his weakness, because they're too busy scrambling for their lives. Hard to blame them. Look at how he introduces himself. He turned his own life support off so the rebels wouldn't be able to see the lights on his chest, just so he could do the lightsaber reveal. He knows how to be scary. The scene is thrilling and exciting, it doesn't overstay its welcome, displays his character faithfully, and most importantly, it has a point. That movie was about how the Death Star plans came to be and how they got in the hands of the rebels in the first place. It makes sense that Darth Vader was there at the end. In fact, it would have been very weird if he wasn't, because A New Hope starts where Rogue One ends. He had a very relevant story reason to be there. Okay, now some of you might be thinking, hang on a minute, you just said the Obi-Wan show doesn't need to exist because we don't need to see how Obi-Wan and Leia met, but we also don't need Rogue One because we don't need to see how the rebels got the plans for the Death Star. And to that I say, yeah, sure. But do you know how Rogue One justifies its existence as opposed to the Obi-Wan show? It's actually fucking good. That's the part that matters. People love Darth Vader because he's a good villain. He's intimidating and scary, and Disney doesn't understand that if they want to keep showing him, they have to keep making him good to watch. They just put him on the screen and say, oh, you guys like Darth Vader? Here's Darth Vader. Yeah, but you forgot to make him good. That show sucked. The fight scenes sucked. Lazy writing sucks. This problem extends beyond just Darth Vader though. For a franchise that prides itself on its huge story world, Star Wars really struggles to remember that there are more than 10 people in the entire universe. We don't need Luke Skywalker to show up in The Mandalorian. That show was a breath of fresh air because it had nothing to do with the main story. We don't need the Emperor to somehow return in The Rise of Skywalker, or Lando for that matter. We don't fucking need to see them again. They didn't do this because they had a good idea and it was relevant to include old characters in it. They did it because it puts bums in seats and money in pockets when people go, oh my god, it's Admiral Akbar, he's back! Also, it's worth noting that Disney is now using generative AI to replicate James Earl Jones's voice because they're too cheap to hire an impressionist. They want to use old characters and will gladly take jobs away from actors at the same time. They don't respect the fucking character, they don't respect actors, and they don't respect you. I'm sorry, I got distracted. This video is supposed to be about villains, so I should be focusing on Darth Vader, but it's as if the creators just can't help themselves. They're incapable of letting new things not include old faces. They don't understand how to let new characters have their fun. They'll have an awesome movie or show, and it'll be great by itself, but then they just have to go, oh, but can we please get this guy in the next one? Please? Please? Can you fuck off, man? Hey, what's up? It's me, Afro Joker. I like the Joker for the most part. He's great in the 2019 movie, he's funny in the Lego Batman movie, and everyone knows he's great in The Dark Knight. Heath Ledger is unmatched, blah blah blah, whatever, we all know. What annoys me about the Joker is that DC always seems to think they're being clever when they tease an appearance from him. But we've already had Joker be a main villain many times, so it doesn't feel special when they tease him in whatever new story there is. So it always ends up feeling like his mention is a corporate decision instead, as if there's some kind of contract where whenever he's not the main villain of a product with Batman in it, he has to sneak into a scene or line of dialogue or steal the moment to say, oh yeah, look at me, the Joker, woohoo! Plus, it always seems to be some new Joker we haven't met yet, a new actor, a new rendition. During the Batman, I remember thinking, man, this is awesome, getting to see Batman face off against a formidable bad guy who takes the sole focus and targets other Batman villains. The Riddler really gets to shine in this movie, and then he gets sent to Arkham, and he's all alone, and...
Isn't that just terrible?
Oh, for God's sake, they just couldn't let the movie be good on its own. They simply could not allow a Batman story to go from start to finish without introducing a new Joker right at the end. After all, how can we expect the audience to care if the Joker isn't in it? It makes the movie feel insecure, as if to say, oh, did you like the movie? If you didn't, that's okay, but we can make up for it. You like the Joker, right? You want to see the Joker? Here's the Joker. And if we get to make a sequel, we can make him the bad guy. When that deleted scene from The Batman was released, I was amazed by two things. One, that people liked it and thought it was a good scene. And two, the sheer amount of people going, oh my god, are we going to get the Joker in the next one? Why the hell would you want that? Haven't you seen enough? We've already got a currently running Joker franchise. To have a different version of him be the bad guy of the next Batman movie at the same time would be complete Joker overdose. And it would be incredibly confusing for general audiences. Speaking of which, if you thought the movie specifically about the Joker was safe, think again. They found a way to tease yet another new Joker in that one too. It feels like a parody at this point. If DC was willing to give the other Batman villains a chance, a real chance, we could see someone relatively obscure get pulled back into the public eye, like we did with the new characters from James Gunn's Suicide Squad, or with Spider-Verse. You know, we could get another Spot. I'm glad they deleted that scene from the Batman. I wish they'd have edited him out of the Arkham scene too. I mean, don't get me wrong, sequel bait is fine, but it really didn't have to be the Joker. Would it really have been so hard to have the Riddler meet a different villain there? I mean, sure, it's hard to imagine a Mr. Freeze in this particular story world, but it's not like the Joker was the only option. He was just the marketable one. They've been doing this shit for a while too. I mean, sometimes it's obnoxious like this, and then sometimes it's subtle, like a cute little Easter egg.
Maybe it's the Gotham City in me. We just have a bad history with freaks dressed like clowns.
Yeah, we get it. The Joker is a guy who exists. Can you just shut up? It's like he's doing chip damage to my brain. Talk about someone else. Feature someone else. Teasing him in every single thing makes him not exciting or special anymore. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, dude, chill out. It's a small sacrifice to keep the producers happy. It's just business. And to that I say, yeah, that's the problem. It's just business. It's the kind of business that impedes on the art. Like when a product placement grinds a movie to a halt. It's jarring and it breaks the immersion. Like when you get really invested in a YouTube video and the guy suddenly switches gears to talk about this video's sponsor, corporate greed. This shit is obnoxious product placement and it's very annoying. Hey, what's up? It's me, Serious now. So there we have 3 examples of how relying too heavily on a particular villain can be a detriment to the media. Marvel is relying too heavily on Venom to draw audiences, using him as the feature villain too often and neglecting the other roster of villains in Spider-Man stories. This results in repetitive stories that aren't living up to their potential because it only lets the writers and the audience explore and engage in the characters in one singular way. Disney is relying too heavily on Darth Vader to draw audiences, using his appearance as an excuse to be lazy and write weak shows. They've demonstrated they can't move on and don't trust their new characters to draw audiences, and consequently, we're getting cheap cameos and appearances left and right. And DC is relying too heavily on the Joker to draw audiences, using him as sequel bait and Easter egg fodder to a distracting degree. They seem to have forgotten that Batman does not need to tease or reference or feature a face-off with the Joker for it to be a good movie. They think of Joker as an essential safety net, and that if they reference or name drop him enough times, the audience will cheer and clap regardless of whether the movie is actually good or not. I want to make it clear, I don't dislike any of these characters. I just think it would be great to see them take the backseat or even get out of the car entirely and let the other villains of their franchises have a fair turn. They're playing it far too safe, far too often, and the market is oversaturated and boring now. Everything in moderation, you know? Anyway, that's all for now. I'm going to go watch a movie about the multiverse. Bye!